They gave my brother an $800,000 mansion, white walls, marble floors, a house that looked like it had never known the smell of failure. And they gave me a cabin. Not even a cabin, really. It was a rotting box, a skeleton made of wood and mold, standing at the edge of a forgotten field, where even the wind sounded tired. I remember standing there, holding the keys, staring at the broken door that hung loose like an insult. My brother was across town, already pouring champagne with the lawyer who had just read the will. He laughed when our father's voice played from that dusty recorder, a message left for after his death. Divide the estate as written. Those 4 words destroyed whatever was left of my faith in fairness. I wasn't angry then. Not yet. Just hollow. You see, betrayal doesn't come all at once. It seeps into you, drop by drop, until you start to taste metal in your own mouth. At first I told myself it was fine, that maybe life was trying to humble me, that maybe somehow this rotten cabin had meaning. But the truth, it wasn't humility. It was humiliation. When I was a boy, my father used to tell me that wood remembers. He'd say, every nail you drive in anger, every crack you ignore, it all comes back one day. Back then, I thought he was talking about carpentry. Now, standing in front of the splintered door, I realized he was talking about people. My brother, Marcus. He was the golden son. The kind of man who never sweated in the sun, whose shirts were always ironed by someone else's hands. He was the one our parents trusted with their money, their business, their pride. And me? I was the ghost who fixed their fences and mowed their lawn. When the inheritance was read, Marcus didn't even look at me. He didn't have to. His silence said it all. You were never part of this family's real story. I spent the first night in that cabin sitting on tin floor. No furniture, no light except for the dull glow of my phone. The walls groaned, like they were whispering secrets from a time when love still lived here. I could almost hear my mother's laughter, faint and distant, as if she was trapped somewhere behind the wood. She died when I was 16. Heart failure, they said. But something in her eyes before she left never felt peaceful. I remember her calling me to the porch one night, just before her death. She told me, if anything ever happens to me, don't let them take what's yours. I thought she meant the family business, maybe her jewelry. But now, sitting in that crumbling cabin, I realized I had nothing left to take. Still, I stayed. Something about the silence kept me there, like the cabin itself was waiting for me, waiting to show me something. The days passed slowly. Every morning, I'd drive past Marcus's mansion on my way to work. The iron gates opened automatically for him, closing behind me like a warning. He had parties, cars, a life that sparkled in every photo he posted online. And me. I had the sound of dripping water from a cracked pipe in the corner of my ceiling. But then one night, I woke up to a noise. A hollow knock beneath the floor. At first I thought it was the wood settling, or maybe rats. But it came again. Steady, intentional, like something alive, buried deep below. I grabbed a flashlight and pressed my ear against the floorboards. Silence. Then, 3 knocks, slow and heavy, echoing through the bones of the cabin. That's when I found it. A small rusted metal ring hidden under the rug, shaped like a handle. When I pulled it, the floor lifted slightly, revealing a hatch covered in dirt and age. I froze. My heart raced in my chest. It wasn't just a basement. It was something else. Something meant to stay hidden. I didn't open it that night. I couldn't. Fear isn't just about what might be below you. It's about what might already be inside you. The next morning, I went to see Marcus. He was standing in his driveway, wearing that smug grin that only money can buy. I asked him if he knew anything about the cabin's history. He laughed. like I'd just told a bad joke. That dump? It's been there forever. Probably nothing but spiders and regrets down there. Reggie. Rets. He had no idea how right he was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. Don't let them take what's yours. The wind pushed against the windows as if the house itself wanted to breathe again. Finally, I went down to the hatch. I pulled it open. The smell hit first. Old, damp air, mixed with something faintly metallic. And then I saw the stairs. Wooden, narrow, leading into darkness. I remember whispering, "Mom," as if her ghost could hear me. The flashlight flickered, and for the first time since her death, I felt her presence. It wasn't peaceful. It was urgent. That was the moment everything changed. That night, the man I used to be, the man who accepted humiliation, died in that cabin. And something else was born. Something that had waited years beneath the floorboards, biding its time, breathing in the dark. I didn't know it yet, but the truth buried in that basement would tear apart everything I thought I knew. About my mother, my brother, and the fortune that was never meant to be his. And when I finally understood what she'd left behind, my revenge would no longer be a choice. It would be destiny. The next morning, sunlight broke through the cracks of the cabin's walls like knives. I hadn't slept. My mind was chained to that hatch, to what I'd seen and smelled beneath it. That damp, metallic scent still clung to my skin, no matter how many times I washed my hands. I couldn't stop thinking about my mother's words. Don't let them take what's yours. At the time, I thought she meant money. But the way that sentence echoed in my head now, it felt like a warning. I decided to dig deeper, literally. I cleared away the dust and pulled the hatch open again. The flashlight cut through the dark, catching something: wood planks, old jars, and a box. It was small, metal, rusted shut. I brought it upstairs and pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside were old letters, folded, yellowed, written in my mother's handwriting. The first one began with, "If you're reading this, it means the truth finally found you." My heart froze. She'd written them to me. But the words inside, they weren't a mother's comfort. They were confessions. She wrote about how Marcus wasn't truly our father's son, that he was born from an affair, the child of a man my mother once loved but could never be with. Our father knew, and he made her pay for it every single day. He humiliated her, broke her spirit, and when she tried to protect Marcus, he turned that rage toward me, his real son, the reminder of everything he couldn't control. He gave Marcus everything in the will, not out of love, but as a final punishment to her memory. To remind her, even in death, that her love had destroyed our family. I sat there for hours, trembling. My entire childhood had been a lie built on someone else's guilt. Marcus's perfect life, his mansion, his money. It wasn't a reward. It was hush money. And the cabin, it wasn't an insult. It was my mother's last message. A place where the truth was buried for me to find. The next day, I drove to Marcus's mansion. He greeted me with that fake polished smile. I told him I found letters from Mom. At first, he laughed it off, called it emotional nonsense. But when I said her words, "You were never his son," the color drained from his face. He tried to deny it. Then, his voice cracked. He looked at me and whispered, "You don't understand what you're doing." That's when I saw it. Fear. The first real emotion I'd ever seen on his face. He begged me not to tell anyone, not to ruin the family name. The irony nearly made me laugh. The family name? The one that stole everything from me? I left without saying another word. But inside, something dark started to grow. It wasn't anger anymore. It was purpose. That night, I went back to the cabin. I read the rest of my mother's letters. In the final one, she wrote, "What they built on lies can only be ended by truth. When the time comes, let the world see who they really are." Her words became my vow. For the next few days, I started digging around the cabin, searching for anything more she might have hidden. And I found something else. A small black notebook wrapped in plastic, buried near the old well. It had bank account numbers, receipts, and photos. Proof of the secret life my father lived. He'd laundered money through the family company, paid off lawyers, and buried everything beneath paperwork and fake deals. The notebook was evidence that could destroy Marcus, the company, and everything tied to that inheritance. And then, at the very back of the book, a key, tiny, old, and labeled, "For what's below." I knew what it meant. The basement. But before I went back down there, I made one last mistake. I called Marcus. I told him I wanted to meet, that I had something he needed to see. He sounded calm at first. Too calm. He told me to come over for dinner, to talk it through like family. I should have known better. When I arrived at his mansion, the lights were dim. Marcus was sitting alone at the table, a half-finished glass of wine beside him. He smiled. "Brother," he said, "I've been thinking. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot." Then I saw it. A folder. The same kind of folder our father used for his business files. Marcus slid it across the table. Inside were photos of me at the cabin, my face, my car, even the basement hatch. He'd been watching me. "You don't understand," he said softly. "What's down there isn't meant to be found." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. He just leaned back and said, "Some things Mom did shouldn't come to light." My blood ran cold. Then I noticed the faint smear of blood on his sleeve. Fresh. And suddenly, I realized he hadn't called me for dinner. He'd called me to end this. I left before he could say another word. I drove straight back to the cabin, heart pounding. Whatever was buried below wasn't just the truth. It was the reason my mother died. And now, I knew, Marcus wasn't protecting a legacy. He was hiding a crime. The road back to the cabin felt longer that night. Every mile stretched like a confession waiting to be spoken. The trees seemed to lean closer, as if they already knew what I was about to uncover. By the time I reached the old porch, the sky was bleeding red over the hills. The kind of red that feels like a warning. I unlocked the hatch again. The air that escaped was colder this time, heavier, like it carried secrets that had been dying to breathe. I took the key from my pocket, the one labeled "For what's below." My fingers trembled as it fit perfectly into a small lock built into the wall beneath the stairs. It clicked open with a sound that didn't feel like metal. It felt like time breaking. Behind the wall was a second door, a hidden chamber. And what waited inside changed everything I believed about my family, about myself. The first thing I saw were boxes, hundreds of them, neatly labeled with years: 1992, 1993, 1994, all the way to 2018. Inside each were photographs, medical files, letters, newspaper clippings, and cash. Stacks of it. Old bills, sealed in plastic. Tens of thousands, maybe millions. At the center of the room was a single wooden chair, facing a wall covered in pinned documents. My mother's handwriting was everywhere. Her notes, her warnings, her proof. And there, written in red ink across the center of the wall: "He killed them." I stepped closer. There were photos of women, faces circled in red, dates, autopsy notes, and one line beneath them all: Unsolved disappearances. Same location, same man. My father. He wasn't just cruel. He was a monster wearing a father's skin. The family company wasn't built on success. It was built on blood. He'd used his position to cover crimes, to bury bodies, to silence stories. And my mother. She found out. She tried to expose him. But when she couldn't, she documented everything, every payment, every victim, every lie. That notebook I found outside, it was her backup plan. But this basement, this was her grave of truth. I felt the ground shift beneath me. All my life, I thought the cabin was my punishment. Now I saw it was her protection. A vault she left for me. The only person she could trust to finish what she started. I sat in that chair for hours, staring at the photos, the papers, the horror of it all. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went quiet. Because revenge doesn't begin with rage. It begins with silence. The kind that sharpens you. The kind that burns slower than fire. I realized then what Marcus meant when he said, "What's down there isn't meant to be found." He knew. He'd been helping Father cover it all. That's why he got the mansion. That's why he got everything. Blood money dressed as inheritance. I climbed back up the stairs with the box of evidence in my hands. The house felt different now, like it was finally awake. And so was I. For the next few days, I stopped sleeping. I scanned every document, recorded every confession, memorized every name. I built a map of my family's sins. And somewhere in the process, something inside me changed. I stopped feeling human. I stopped thinking about forgiveness or fairness. The only thought left was balance. Marcus had tried to end this quietly. He'd failed. Now it was my turn. I started leaving traces. Anonymous envelopes to journalists. USB drives left at police stations. Files uploaded under false names. And slowly, whispers began to spread. About the once perfect family. The powerful name now stained with doubt. Marcus called me dozens of times. I never answered. Then one night, he left a voicemail. Just 3 words. "You'll regret this." But regret is for the innocent. I wasn't one of them anymore. One evening, I stood outside his mansion again. From the hill, I could see him pacing inside, yelling on the phone. His empire collapsing one headline at a time. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like watching a man drown in the same ocean he'd filled himself. And then, in the middle of that quiet rage, I remembered something my mother had written in her last note. "When you seek justice, you'll find ghosts instead." I looked at my reflection in the window. And she was right. I wasn't seeking justice anymore. I was becoming one of those ghosts. By dawn, Marcus's world was burning. His accounts frozen. His name ruined. His secrets exposed. But the fire wasn't done. Not yet. Because I still hadn't told the world what my father really was, and I still hadn't opened the last box. The one marked with only 2 words, "For the Son." Inside it, I found a single videotape, dated the year before my mother died. The label read, "His Confession." I didn't have the courage to watch it that night, but I knew what came next. The final act. The reckoning. And this time, it wouldn't just be revenge. It would be resurrection. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The tape sat on my desk like a beating heart. Small, black, and heavy with truth. Every hour that passed, it called to me. By dawn, I gave in. The moment I pressed play, I heard his voice. My father. Cold, calm, unshaken. The voice of a man who believed he'd never face consequence. He spoke like he was dictating history, not confessing it. He named his victims, his partners, the cover-ups, and then he said my mother's name. The words that followed tore the air from my chest. She found out, he said. She wanted to go to the police. I couldn't let her destroy everything. My mother didn't die in an accident. She was silenced by the man she once called husband. And Marcus knew. That was why he warned me to leave it buried. Because the mansion he lived in wasn't just a reward, it was hush money. I remember sitting there, staring at the static after the tape ended, feeling something inside me collapse. It wasn't grief anymore. It was something sharper, something that smiled without joy. They took my mother. They took my life. But they forgot one thing. I had nothing left to lose. That's when I stopped being a son and became an executioner. I started small. A leaked tape here, a hidden drive sent to an old investigator there. But each move was deliberate, each cut precise, like surgery on a diseased legacy. Within weeks, the news erupted. The perfect family name became a headline soaked in scandal. My father's old company faced lawsuits, raids, investigations. The mansion my brother once flaunted became a cage of flashing lights and camera crews. And Marcus, he started to crumble. He called, begged, cursed. But when the walls began closing in, he did what cowards always do. He blamed someone else. He blamed me. He tried to destroy me with the same lies he once told to protect our father. But this time, I was ready. Because I had the truth. And the truth, once unleashed, doesn't serve masters. It devours them. I sent the tape to the world. Every frame. Every word. Uncut. And when it aired, time stopped. People who once called my father a leader watched him become a monster in their living rooms. His reputation turned to ash overnight. The mansion was raided. The empire fell, but Marcus didn't go quietly. He fled, tried to take what little remained. He thought he could escape justice like father once did. But I was already waiting for him. He met me at the old estate, the house we both grew up in, now abandoned, silent, decaying like the truth it once hid. When he walked in, his eyes were wild. He looked at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Because the boy he betrayed was gone. He shouted, cursed, said I'd destroyed everything our family built. I told him I only destroyed what never should have existed. He lunged at me, fists trembling, tears in his eyes, screaming that it was father's will. And that's when I realized something. He wasn't my enemy. He was another victim. Raised on lies, fed with guilt, chained by loyalty. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But pity doesn't erase graves, and mercy doesn't resurrect mothers. When he left that night, the police were already on their way. I watched from the porch as the lights flashed red against the sky. He looked back once. No anger left, just emptiness. Maybe he finally saw what we had both become. Two sons haunted by the same ghost. By morning, the mansion was sealed. The arrests were made. The money seized. And for the first time in decades, silence returned to our name. But it wasn't peace. Peace requires innocence. And I had lost mine long ago. The cabin, the one I once cursed, became my only refuge. I sat in that basement again, surrounded by the remnants of my mother's war. And for the first time, I understood her. She didn't hide these secrets to protect herself. She hid them so that someday, someone would have the strength to finish what she couldn't. Her strength was never in silence. It was in survival. and mine was in breaking the cycle. By the time the sun rose, I had one last act left. One final thing to do before the story could end. Took the last envelope she'd left behind, the one labeled, "When it's over." Inside, there was a single note. "If you're reading this, you made it out alive. That means my death wasn't for nothing. But don't let revenge be your home. Leave before it buries you too." I sat there, reading those words again and again, and for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because it finally had a name. I left the cabin at dawn. The air was cold, sharp, the kind that carries memory. Behind me, the forest whispered with ghosts. Ahead, the world felt both empty and endless. They say revenge sets you free, but they never tell you what freedom feels like when there's nothing left to return to. The newspapers called it the inheritance scandal of the decade. My father's empire dismantled, my brother sentenced, and my name cleared. But none of that mattered, because the boy who once wanted justice didn't exist anymore. I walked away from the ruins of a legacy built on deceit. Every brick, every contract, every polished smile, all paid for with someone's silence. And now that silence had a voice. Mine. I didn't take the money, didn't want it. I donated it to rebuild the town my father once destroyed for profit. Maybe that was redemption. Or maybe it was just another form of guilt trying to disguise itself as grace. Some nights, I still dream of that basement. The smell of dust, the flicker of the old bulb, the way the tape crackled before revealing the truth. But mostly, I dream of her. My mother. Her hands warm against my face. Her voice whispering, "Be better than the world that broke you." I never became better. I just became quieter. And sometimes, that's the only way pain learns to breathe. Years passed. The mansion rotted. The news moved on, and the world forgot our names. But I remember everything. The look in Marcus's eyes the last time I saw him. Fear and regret bound together. The sound of my father's voice echoing through that tape, proud and damned all at once. The weight of the envelope in my hands, her final message written in trembling ink. People ask me if it was worth it, if the truth was worth the cost, if vengeance brought peace. I tell them the truth. Revenge doesn't bring peace. It just rearranges the pain. You trade one ghost for another. And soon, you stop knowing which one haunts you more, the ones you lost, or the one you became. Sometimes I sit by the lake near the cabin, the same lake I used to fish in as a child. The water still reflects the sky the same way. But when I look into it now, I don't see myself. I see everything I buried to become the man I am. And I wonder if my mother would forgive me for burning her world to cleanse it, for becoming the fire she once tried to put out. But forgiveness is a luxury for the living. And I've been dead inside for years. Still, there's a strange beauty in the ruin. A quiet kind of redemption in knowing the truth survived, even if I didn't. So I stay here, in the cabin that started it all. Not as punishment, but as remembrance. Every creak of the wood, every flicker of the lamp, every whisper in the dark reminds me, justice isn't something you achieve. It's something you endure. The storm has passed. The fire's gone out. And all that remains is silence. But in that silence, I finally understand what she meant. Don't let revenge be your home. Because it never was. It was just the road I had to take, to finally find my way out. And now, standing at the edge of that road, I whisper the last words she ever wrote. You made it out alive. The wind carries them away, and for the first time in my life, I let go.